Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The fight between Tyson Fury and unbeaten fringe contender Tom Schwarz on June 15th in Las Vegas has been confirmed to be a pay-per-view event in the United Kingdom. And I know that's not going to make everyone happy because this is obviously a fight that not many people are happy about. Sure, there is the hard sell by promoters Bob Arum, who Tyson Fury is now signed on with in a co-promotional deal, and also his existing promoter Frank Warren, who are giving this the big one, talking up Tom Schwarz something chronic, trying to make him out that he's better than he really is by playing up his undefeated status and saying that, look, he's number 2 in the WBO, higher than Tyson Fury. But obviously this, for many, including myself, is a mismatch. So I'm more than a little surprised to see that they've decided to make this a pay-per-view event in the United Kingdom. In the USA, it's going to be on ESPN+, so if you have the app, you're in the US, you can get that for, your $5 a month. And I was wondering about some of why they would make this a pay-per-view, and I think some of this just comes down to the numbers. To pay Tyson Fury what they're going to have to pay him on this new deal that he's on, which is reportedly Bob Arum has sort of confirmed in a roundabout way that if he has all the fights that he's meant to against some of the opponents that we would expect him to be against, that it will be somewhere around $100 million plus if he has that over the life of his deal with ESPN and Top Rank. But what he's getting for this fight, because this is his first fight on that new deal, it's a bit unclear, but it's guaranteed, I'm sure, to be in the millions of dollars. And how are they going to pay him out of the existing pot? Because ESPN Plus, well, they have a budget for a certain amount of fights a year, and I'm sure he'll be getting a decent chunk of change from that. But the pay-per-view money from the United Kingdom is probably going to help pay Tyson Fury for this fight, which is probably in some sense why it has been put on pay-per-view in the United Kingdom. But also, BT Sports doesn't actually have any outlay, so it's going to be on BT Sports box office. So this is a straight out clip the ticket sort of move by BT, because they obviously get to keep a certain amount of each pay-per-view, and if they're not putting on the card, they're not contributing any money to production costs as such, they're not running the event, they might send a team to cover the fight, all that sort of stuff, and they've got some coverage, but that's a smaller amount than if they were running the card, say, in the United Kingdom. So it's an opportunity for them to actually clip the ticket and make some money. So I can see why they would want to do it, and it's probably going to help Tyson Fury's, pay some of his purse, which I'm sure will be considerable. But for fans, for an event in the United Kingdom, which, this will be at 4 or 5 in the morning, the main event, it's probably going to, only get a lukewarm response to some extent. And remember, Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, when they fought in December 1st, we never really heard the BT pay-per-view numbers for that fight. Sure, you got the US numbers, which was just over 300,000, but there was nothing too much on the UK side of the coin. And if it had have gone gangbusters, I'm sure they would have said, because that's just the way that promoters operate. They would have been singing from the rooftops, and didn't really get that. So it's hard to know, given we don't have the numbers for that, what the actual sort of bar is. But given this is a much less significant fight against a undefeated guy in Tom Schwarz, who's 24-0, he's a fringe contender at best, he's only been operating at about German sort of, coming up to European level. What sort of interest is this going to draw? Because let's face it, so far, it's been a pretty quiet and muted build-up. It was announced a number of weeks ago, and it's kind of just sort of fallen, into the background a little bit. There's been a number of other things going on in the heavyweight division, stuff around Deontay Wilder and Dominic Breazeale, some of the build-up to that fight, all the stuff with Jarrell Miller and the sort of replacement with Luis Ortiz, and then Michael Hunter being in the frame, then ultimately Andy Ruiz getting that fight. A number of things going on, and it's drawn some attention and taken some oxygen away from this Tom Schwarz and Tyson Fury fight, which for many, it's not like people were really jazzed about that fight to begin with. So I'm sure this fight, for many people who are in the UK having to fork out £20 or so, this is not going to go over terribly well. But now that it is on pay-per-view, they're going to have to really try to push this at the fans, and this is part of the reason that they held that press conference, because if you look at that event that BT put on, which was a month out from the fight, it's a bit curious really, because Tom Schwarz wasn't even there. They had Tyson Fury, Frank Warren, Ben Davison, and Bob Arum on stage talking for about 20-25 minutes. And it was really trying to, and I'm going to do another video on other parts of this press conference, but this is more on the event itself, the pay-per-view, sort of some of the fallout from that. From some of what I've been seeing online, people are not happy. I'm sure some will be willing to hand over their money, no questions, because it's Tyson Fury. You know, some believe that he is a pay-per-view fighter, and this is the level that he will be at now that he signed this deal with ESPN and Top Rank, especially after his comeback fight against Deontay Wilder. But for a number of other people, this is very marginal, especially considering the strength of the undercard. And it's one of these things, if you have a weakish main event, which I think many people would regard Tom Schwarz as not being an opponent most would want to see Tyson Fury fighting. Often you need to have a really stacked undercard, and it's just not quite there at the moment. But Bob Arum did say that he believes there's no question the event will sell out. He said there's only 2,000 tickets left, and that brokers have been snapping up tickets left, right and centre, and there'll be quite a demand for the tickets on the secondary ticket market, although you would expect him to say things like this. But it was quite interesting because Tyson Fury, speaking of Tom Schwarz and effectively talking him up, but then going on to say he doesn't need to talk up Tom Schwarz because he's an undefeated fighter and he's ranked higher than him in the WBO. But yeah, I think some of that is you can only dress up Tom Schwarz so much in the context of him being a contender, because he hasn't gone through some of the levels where we would expect a guy who's fighting Tyson Fury at a certain level to go through. But it is what it is. The fight is made. But I think some of this press conference was really more about announcing that it is going to be on box office, but also they need to get some momentum into the promotion because it's been pretty quiet, pretty muted to date. And it's not like a lot of people have been talking about this fight, you know, day in, day out. There's been little bits here and there. Tyson Fury's been doing a few things on social media, but I expect in the next month or so, we will see them trying to ramp this up and trying to sort of do some of the things that they want to do with Tyson Fury to reach more of the American market and build him up. And I'll touch on some of that in another video because Bob Arum made some very interesting statements. But what do you make of this being on pay-per-view in the United Kingdom? Is it that kind of fight? I guess some people will say yes, but others will be willing to wait for the replay, especially given the time of the morning. And also when you consider you've got other fights coming up that won't be on pay-per-view, including the Daniel Dubois and Nathan Gorman one, the Kid Galahad and Josh Warrington one. So there are other fights which you could argue comparatively will be more competitive than this one is expected to be. But I guess when Tyson Fury is due millions of dollars per fight now, they have to pay him somehow, and pay-per-view, let's face it, is one of those things that you have to use when there is a certain amount that is due to a fighter or due in a deal. So yeah, it is what it is to some extent, but it's not going to make everybody happy. Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, or follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.